Welcome to Guyana News Updates, your essential source for the latest developments across the Cooperative Republic. On today's podcast, we're diving into a wide range of impactful stories, from key political statements and the upcoming elections, to major government initiatives aimed at driving economic growth, advancing education, and solidifying Guyana's leadership in global biodiversity conservation. Here's what we have lined up. We begin with the People's Progressive Party Civic, PPPC, where Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh declared that the PPPC is the only party that genuinely cares about the people of Guyana. He outlined new investment plans for Region 6, East Berbice Quarantine, and contrasted the PPPC's performance with what he described as the hardships under the APNU plus AFC coalition, 2015 to 2020, including the closure of sugar estates and the imposition of new taxes. In a significant political shift, James Bond, a recent addition to the PPPC, has been vocal in criticizing the APNU plus AFC's track record, especially in healthcare, youth development, and agriculture. Bond pointed out that the PPPC constructed 6 modern hospitals in just 3 years, while APNU plus AFC only managed 1 polyclinic in 5. He also endorsed the government's updated oil and gas policy, which includes a 10% royalty and a 10% corporation tax under the new Production Sharing Agreement, PSA. On the economic front, President Dr. Irfan Ali announced plans to establish a special development banking institution that will provide 0% interest loans to small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. A co-investment model will also be introduced to ease collateral requirements, a move expected to unlock business opportunities across the country. In education news, President Ali revealed that the University of Guyana, UG, received over 20,000 applications for the upcoming academic year. This surge follows the government's promise to make university education free starting January 2025. To accommodate the growing demand, the government will collaborate with private tertiary institutions. The initiative is projected to benefit approximately 11,000 current students each year, with an estimated cost of $8 billion. On energy development, beginning July 1, 2025, residents in Madia and Campbelltown, Region 8, will enjoy a 30% reduction in electricity tariffs, thanks to the integration of a new solar farm. Additional reductions are anticipated for hinterland and riverine communities, bolstered by the upcoming 300-megawatt gas-to-energy project, which is expected to cut national energy costs by 50%. Turning to the opposition, the Alliance for Change, AFC, has named Laura George, a respected indigenous rights advocate, as its prime ministerial candidate for the upcoming general elections. And in international news, Guyana hosted the inaugural Global Biodiversity Alliance, GBA, summit in Georgetown. The summit featured the launch of the GBA, adoption of the Georgetown Declaration by more than 140 countries and organizations, and a comprehensive roadmap to achieve the 30 by 30 target, protecting 30% of land and sea by 2030. A historic partnership was also announced with the Yale Center for Biodiversity and Global Change, which will help Guyana build the world's first fully standardized, national-scale biodiversity tracking system. President Ali has been named inaugural chair of the GBA, reinforcing Guyana's position as a global environmental leader. Stay tuned as we explore all these developments and more, bringing you the most relevant and timely updates right here on Guyana News Updates. The podcast discussion begins now.
Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into, well, a really fascinating story. Quite multifaceted, actually. It spans everything from the heat of political rallies to the serious business of global environmental summits.
Right.
We've gathered a bunch of recent news clips, political statements, government plans, and this major international biodiversity summit. And it all centers on one very dynamic nation right now, Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
It's a country really juggling 2 big things, A critical election coming up while also, stepping up on the world stage as a leader in environmental conservation.
And our job today, our mission, if you like, is to sort of dig into this mix of information. We want to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising facts, and the big picture story that emerges when, a country is handling major domestic changes and election heat alongside these really ambitious international green commitments.
Yeah, it's a fascinating tightrope walk, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
A huge challenge, but also, you could say, a massive opportunity to see how they manage this dual focus.
So as we go through this, maybe you can think about how these different threads, the politics at home and this global green leadership, might actually be, deeply connected. Let's try and unpack this. Okay, let's dive straight into the immediate situation in Guyana. The general and regional elections, they're set for September 1st, 2025. That date is looming large.
It really is. It's shaping so much of the national conversation, the political moves right now.
Yeah, and our sources give us a pretty clear view into the campaign talk, especially from the governing party, the People's Progressive Party Civic, the PPPC.
That's right. You can see them actively framing their narrative, their vision for Guyana.
Take the finance minister, Dr. Ashni Singh. He was speaking to people in Burbis and made some, very strong statements. He said the PPPC is the only party that genuinely cares for people. And he promised big investments for Region 6 East Burbis Quarantine.
He did. And he wasn't just making promises, though the promises were significant. We can get into those. He was also actively contrasting their approach with what he described as real hardships under the previous APNU plus AFC coalition from 2015 to 2020.
What specifically did he point to?
He talked about the closure of sugar estates, which hit Burbis hard. He mentioned new taxes being brought in and the removal of grants for school children. Things he argued directly hurt people there.
Right. And the PPPC's promises, if they get reelected, they sound pretty substantial.
Oh, definitely. The sources detail plans for a new bridge across the Quarantine River, a big one, and a 4-lane bridge across the Burbis River, plus new housing schemes, investment in social sectors.
But all contingent on re-election, he made that clear.
Yes, absolutely. It's a direct pitch to voters. Re-elect us, and you get these major projects.
Okay, now let's look at something pretty interesting on the political scene. James Bond joining the PPPC.
Ah, yes, that's definitely stirred things up.
Yeah.
A former key figure in the APNU plus AFC coalition, now with the governing party.
And he hasn't been quiet about it. He came out with some sharp criticisms of his old party, didn't he? Declared, "I come to beat and teach." Pretty blunt.
Very blunt. It signals, I think, a shift in tactics, maybe a more aggressive phase of the campaign. And he brought specifics to back it up.
Like on healthcare.
Exactly. He claimed the PPPC built 6 new state-of-the-art hospitals in just 3 years. And he contrasted that sharply with the APNU plus AFC, saying they took 5 years just to finish 1 polyclinic.
And he added that the PPPC is set to deliver 2 specialized hospitals this year, maternity and pediatric.
Yes. Firsts for Guyana, he pointed out, making the case for faster delivery under the current government.
He also got personal about youth policy, didn't he? Mentioning a proposal he made while with APNU plus AFC.
He did. He talked about suggesting youth representation in cabinet parliament, across the board, and said it was ignored. That personal angle, it adds a different kind of weight to his criticism.
And it raises questions about how parties are really engaging young people.
For sure. And then he went straight for the numbers on youth empowerment. Challenged the opposition's claim of helping 1,000 young people start businesses.
How did he frame that?
Well, he did some quick math. Said roughly 70% of Guyana's 800,000 people are under 35, and that's about 560,000 youths.
Yeah.
Then helping 1,000 start businesses is, he called it a miserly 0.17%.
Ouch. That puts a different spin on it.
It does. And then he contrasted it. He claimed that just in Region 4, the PPPC has helped create over 3,000 small contractors and given out over 10,000 small business grants.
So drawing a really stark comparison in terms of scale and impact?
Exactly. That's the clear message he was sending.
And he didn't stop there. He criticized the opposition leader, Aubrey Norton.
Yeah, quite directly. On agriculture, Bond claimed Norton sort of knows nothing because he apparently didn't advise people on how to apply for farmland or things like shade houses.
Right. And then on oil and gas, that's obviously huge for Guyana.
Absolutely critical. Bond accused Norton of not understanding the new production sharing agreement, the PSA. He specifically highlighted what he called new guarantees for Guyana in that agreement.
What were those?
A 10% royalty, a 10% corporation tax, and this is important, reducing the expenses oil companies can deduct from 75% down to 65%. Bond claims this leads to a better sort of 50-50 split of the profits for Guyana.
Okay, so those percentages directly affect the bottom line for the country.
Hugely. It's all about how much revenue Guyana actually keeps from its oil.
Yeah.
More royalty, clear taxes, lower deductible costs. It all means potentially more money for the government to use.
Makes sense.
So Bond wrapped up his appeal by asking residents to vote for, in his words, tried, tested, and trusted leadership, framing the choice very clearly.
So with all this political back and forth, who are the actual parties approved for the election? We know the big two, PPPC and APNU.
Right, but GTOM, the Elections Commission, has approved others too. There's the AFC, of course, who used to be in coalition with APNU. Then the Assembly of Liberty and Prosperity, ALP. Forward Guyana Movement, FGM. And one called We Invest in Nationhood, W1N.
Okay. And speaking of the AFC, the Alliance for Change, they had their own internal election recently.
They did, and they elected Laura George as their prime ministerial candidate. That was on July 25th.
Laura George. Tell us about her background. Sounds quite interesting.
Yeah, she's a former teacher, but she's also internationally known as an advocate for indigenous rights. She's got over 20 years of experience in that field.
So choosing her, especially with that strong background in indigenous rights, that sends a particular signal, doesn't it?
It certainly could. And the AFC's presidential candidate, Nigel Hughes, he commented on the process, said it was transparent and fair, and he felt that was good for party unity.
Okay, let's shift focus slightly now. Away from the direct electioneering, what about broader government initiatives? Things aimed at, economic independence, opportunities for ordinary citizens.
Right. The sources highlight quite a few things here. One really standout announcement was from President Ali about establishing a special development bank.
A development bank, what's the goal there?
Primarily to support small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs. It's designed to tackle some of their biggest challenges, especially getting funding.
How so? What's special about it?
Well, the big headline is loans at 0% interest. That's huge for a new business.
0%. Wow.
Yeah. And also a co-investment model. The idea is the bank shares some of the risk, which could make it easier for entrepreneurs to get loans without needing as much collateral. That's often a massive hurdle.
Right, putting up your house or something.
Exactly. So this aims to lower that barrier. And there's also a plan to build a dedicated facility, like a hub, for these small businesses. Safe, secure, good infrastructure.
Sounds like a significant push for entrepreneurship.
It does. And another huge area is education, specifically tertiary education.
Ah, yes, the University of Guyana, UG. The numbers were staggering, over 20,000 applications for the next academic year.
Incredible surge, yeah. Way more than they can actually handle on campus.
And the reason?
Well, the sources point directly to the government making university education free, starting from January 2025.
Free university. That's a massive policy shift.
It is. It's estimated to benefit around 11,000 current students right away, costing about $8 billion annually. A huge investment in, human capital.
So how are they planning to deal with all those extra applicants if UG is oversubscribed?
The plan is ambitious. The government says it will partner with every private tertiary institution in the country.
Every single one.
That's the statement. The stated goal is, and I'm quoting here, no child who wants a university education will be left without education because of space.
That's a big promise. Shows a strong commitment to access.
Absolutely. And it ties in with other things they've done, like the big student loan write-off program, U.S., $11 billion for over 13,000 students.
Right, clearing old debt.
Mm-hmm. And major investments in training generally. Over 82,000 people trained, including nearly 40,000 through DUCHOAL, the Guyana Online Academy of Learning. It all points towards boosting skills across the board.
Okay, another key area for people's daily lives, energy costs. What's happening there?
Well, there was a concrete reduction recently.
Yep.
A 30% cut in electricity tariffs for residents in Madia and Campbelltown. That's in Region 8, effective July 1st.
And that was linked to?
A new solar farm in Madia coming online. So a direct benefit from renewable energy investment hitting people's pockets.
That's tangible. And are there promises for more?
Yes. President Ali has vowed further incentives to cut electricity costs, especially for hinterland and riverine communities, by the end of this year.
Okay. And then there's the big gas-to-energy project we hear about.
All right, the 300-megawatt project. That's expected, or at least promised, to slash energy costs nationally by 50%. That would be transformative for both households and industry.
And other renewable projects, too. It's not just gas.
No, the sources mention other solar projects planned for places like Linden, Wakenham, Bartica, Letham, plus a big program for hinterland electrification, getting small solar panels to all households in remote areas.
So it looks like a multi-pronged approach to energy.
It seems so. Trying to tackle costs, improve access, and bring in renewables.
That's a really comprehensive set of initiatives, isn't it? When you look at the 0% loans, the free university, the energy cost reductions, what's the overall picture these paint about the government's focus?
I mean, it paints a very clear picture of a government focused intently on improving the everyday lives of citizens. It's about economic empowerment, access to crucial services like education, and easing financial burdens like high energy bills.
Right. The goal seems to be tangible, immediate improvements.
Exactly. Trying to make a direct impact that people can feel in their daily lives, whether it's starting a business, getting educated, or just paying a light bill.
Okay, now let's pivot. We've talked domestic politics, development promises. Let's look at this other major aspect, Guyana's role on the global stage, specifically in biodiversity.
Yes, this is equally significant. The big news here is the inaugural Global Biodiversity Alliance, or GBA Summit. It just wrapped up in Georgetown, Guyana on July 25th.
And this wasn't just another meeting, right?
No, not at all. This was the official launch of the alliance itself. They endorsed something called the Georgetown Declaration, and crucially, they set out a pretty ambitious roadmap for protecting biodiversity globally.
And Guyana hosted this, convened by the government under President Ali.
That's right. They brought together over 140 countries and organizations, governments, indigenous leaders, very important scientists, financial institutions, a really broad coalition.
That scale signals serious intent.
It does. The summit was framed as a turning point in international cooperation. The GBA is meant to be this voluntary, inclusive platform. The focus is on actually doing things, shared implementation, finding ways to scale up funding, sharing knowledge.
And the Georgetown Declaration, what's the core idea there?
It essentially recognizes biodiversity, the variety of life on Earth, as a global public good. And it commits everyone who endorsed it to integrate biodiversity into their national development plans, their climate strategies, their financial systems. That integration is key.
Making it part of everything, not just a separate environmental issue.
Precisely. And significantly, the president of COP30, Ambassador Andre Correa de Lago, was there.
COP30 being the big UN climate conference coming up.
Exactly. His presence really underlined how biodiversity is now seen as integral to the climate fight. He specifically commended Guyana's leadership in pushing this forward.
One of the concrete outcomes mentioned was an agreement between Guyana and Yale University.
Yes, a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, with the Yale Center for Biodiversity and Global Change. This is really interesting.
What's it for?
It's about guiding scientific collaboration to co-develop Guyana's National Biodiversity Information System, NBIS. They're describing this as a kind of digital backbone for the world's first fully standardized national-scale biodiversity tracking system.
Wow, first in the world.
That's the claim. And the intention is that it could be a model for other countries to replicate. It's about using data seriously for conservation.
A huge undertaking. And the GBA itself has a roadmap. You mentioned 5 pillars.
Yes, a 5-pillar strategy. Let's quickly run through them. First, hitting that global 30 by 30 target, protecting 30% of land and sea by 2030.
Okay, that's a known goal. What else?
Second, mainstreaming biodiversity, getting it into national and even corporate planning. Third, unlocking new ways to finance it, all things like biodiversity credits, green bonds, debt for nature swaps.
So finding the money.
Crucial. Fourth, empowering indigenous peoples and local communities, IPLCs. Recognizing their rights, involving them in governance, ensuring they benefit financially.
That sounds vital given their role on the ground.
Absolutely. And the 5th pillar is about robust systems for monitoring, accountability, and data sovereignty. This includes creating something called the Gross Biodiversity Power Index.
Gross Biodiversity Power Index. What's that meant to measure?
It's an interesting concept. The idea is to try and measure a nation's overall contribution and capacity in biodiversity conservation, looking at protected areas, species diversity, conservation efforts, stuff like that. Kind of like GDP for the economy, but for biodiversity.
An attempt to quantify and track progress.
Exactly. Hold nations accountable, perhaps.
And the summit itself, over 3 days. What was the feel?
It sounded pretty dynamic. Day 1 was setting the scene, the global context, launching the alliance. Day 2 really dove into solutions financing sessions with the World Bank, linking funding to environmental results, using data with inputs from Yale, and even the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO.
And we heard comments from Guyana's leadership throughout.
Yes. On day 1, Vice President Jagdeo emphasized Guyana moving from just carbon leadership to biodiversity finance, calling it a practical example of balancing development and nature. And on day 2, President Ali described the summit as establishing a new model of multilateralism grounded in equity, data, and collaboration.
A new model. Strong words.
Very. And a key theme that kept coming up, apparently, was this idea of inclusive, locally led conservation. Really strong commitment voiced towards indigenous peoples and local communities and respecting data sovereignty, making sure countries and communities control their own environmental data.
That seems like a critical point for trust and effectiveness.
Absolutely essential.
So how did it all wrap up?
With a communique outlining next steps. A big one is preparing a unified GBA position for that upcoming COP30 climate conference. And President Ali was confirmed as the first chair of the GBA. He declared it wasn't an end, but the beginning of implementation.
The beginning of implementation. So reflecting on all this, Guyana hosting this, driving this alliance, the MU with Yale, how is Guyana positioning itself globally? And what does this mean for other countries trying to balance development and conservation?
Well, to wrap up our deep dive today, we've really seen two sides of Guyana, haven't we? On one hand, intense focus on domestic politics, the upcoming election, big development promises for its citizens.
Right. Things like 0% loans, free university, cheaper energy, very grounded stuff.
Exactly. But then, simultaneously, demonstrating this real leadership on the global environmental stage, hosting the GBA summit, pushing for biodiversity action, setting up advanced tracking systems.
Yeah, it's not just talk. The MOU with Yale, the GBA roadmap, these seem like concrete steps.
They do. And these aren't separate stories, are they? They show a nation really wrestling with how to balance rapid economic growth, fueled partly by oil, with protecting its incredible natural wealth and taking on international responsibilities. It's the core challenge.
Which leaves us and you with a final thought to chew on. Given Guyana's big development plans, especially in energy, alongside this new global leadership role in biodiversity, how might this play out? Could it become a model for other developing nations trying to use their resources and protect nature? Or could it be more of a cautionary tale about the difficulties of doing both? What kind of long-term trade-offs or maybe even synergies do you see emerging from this unique balancing act Guyana is attempting right now? Something to think about.